My name is Claire Reynolds, and this is a story I never thought I'd be able to tell. Not because I didn't want to, but because for the longest time I didn't realize there was anything wrong to begin with. I grew up in Plano, Texas, in a deeply traditional household where family was everything, at least that's what we were taught to believe. But in our family tradition was another word for obedience. It meant that girls were trained to be silent, to serve, and to surrender, especially when it came to marriage. And for us, marriage didn't happen at 18. It didn't wait for love or college or dreams. It came the moment a girl had her first period. That was the signal. That was the mark. That meant you were ready whether you were 12, 13, or even just 11. The moment you bled, you were considered ripe for marriage, and your future would be decided for you, usually with a man twice or even three times your age. We didn't question it. We didn't fight it. We didn't even think to. It was just how things were done in our family. At the age of 8, I watched my cousin Rachel be promised to a man in his 40s. 3 days after her first period, the engagement party was held in our backyard. He was a real estate agent with 3 kids, all older than her. His first 2 wives had passed away from natural causes before turning 20. No one dared speak about it, but I saw the way Rachel's hands trembled. I saw her eyes hollow, distant, resigned. That night, something inside me snapped. I couldn't explain it. I didn't even know what I was feeling. But I remember lying awake in bed, heart pounding, and deciding I would do anything to avoid that fate. Anything. I was only 10, but I started reading quietly in the corner during family gatherings, pretending to be invisible. I memorized the order of who got chosen first, and then I noticed something strange. The girls who were thinner, who hadn't developed much, were always chosen last. That's when I began skipping meals. Not because I hated food, not because I wanted to be thin, but because I was terrified that my body would betray me. That one day I'd wake up with blood on my sheets and a stranger at my front door offering dowry in return for my future. If staying small meant staying safe, then so be it. I learned later that your body needs a certain percentage of fat to start puberty. But back then, all I knew was that starving meant time, and I was desperate for more time. My nickname became Ghost Girl among the cousins. I was so thin my collarbones jutted out like coat hangers. The adults would scold me for not eating enough, but no one looked deeper. As long as I smiled and said yes, ma'am, and thank you, I was still the perfect daughter. My mother, Barbara, was especially proud. She called me the obedient one. I never talked back. I didn't cry. I wore the modest clothes she picked out, and I kept my head down. On the surface, I was everything she wanted, but beneath it all, I was studying, planning, surviving. Every Friday from 1:00 a.m. to 10:00 a.m., I was assigned practice duty serving hot meals to every adult male in our extended family in total silence. I had to move like a shadow. If I spoke or made eye contact, I'd be whipped with a leather belt, 10 lashes, no exceptions. I learned to carry steaming pots with my bare hands. My mother said it would toughen me up for life in the kitchen. No husband wants a weak wife with soft skin, she said once as I held back tears, my fingers burning. She also applied whitening cream to my face every single night. "It'll make you prettier," she whispered. "Men love pale skin. You'll fetch a better husband." It stung. It smelled like chemicals, but I nodded, always nodded. And still, despite the punishment, despite the exhaustion, despite the hunger pains, I clung to the one thing I had control over: my own timing. As long as I didn't bleed, I still had hope. I still had time. At 13, I was still waiting. No period, no engagement, no whispers about my future husband. I was safe for now. But I could feel the pressure building, the eyes of my aunts, the disappointment in my mother's voice when she said things like, "Most girls your age have already been claimed." Then one morning, everything changed. I was in the kitchen helping peel potatoes for the Friday gathering when I stood up too quickly and felt a dizzy wave rush over me. I thought it was from not eating enough. But when I looked down, I saw the faintest smear of red on my legs. My heart stopped. It was here. The one thing I'd fought so hard to delay had arrived. And with it came the chains I'd been running from. I was 13 and a half when I found out the truth. We weren't in some foreign land where these rules were the norm. We were in California, United States. I'd been born here, raised here. But my mother had built a fortress of belief so strong I didn't even know there were doors to escape. She made us believe it was American law that girls had to marry young in certain cultures. She told us every girl who refused her husband either died alone or was cursed to be barren. She said rejecting a marriage would bring shame not just to our family, but to our entire community. But one mistake changed everything, a small one. I wore the wrong t-shirt. It was a Tuesday, and I'd forgotten it was picture day at school. I'd thrown on a wrinkled cotton shirt that didn't cover as much as usual. Nothing inappropriate, just loose. But when I walked past my science teacher, Mrs. Rhodes, her eyes widened. "Claire," she said, gently pulling me aside. Her voice was calm, but her eyes weren't. "Have you been eating?" I lied. "Yeah, a lot. I'm just naturally small." She nodded, then asked to speak with me during lunch. I thought she'd forget. She didn't. That lunch changed everything. She left her classroom for just a minute to go to the bathroom, but she didn't lock her desk drawer. Curiosity made me peek. Inside were pamphlets, dozens of them. Titles like, "Your Rights as a Minor in the U.S." When Tradition Becomes Abuse. Mandated reporting what every student should know. I froze. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, and then I saw it bold and underlined. Marriage under the age of 18 is illegal. No cultural exception. No parental consent override. I felt like the world had cracked open. The rules I'd been raised on weren't rules. They were lies. I panicked. I knew if I took the entire stack, she'd know. So I slid one slim pamphlet inside my waistband, tucked it under my waistband, and pulled my sweater down. That night, while my parents watched television downstairs, I locked myself in the bathroom and read every word of that pamphlet. I didn't sleep. I reread it again and again. By morning, I had it memorized. I started researching quietly at the public library. I found out about Child Protective Services mandatory reporting laws and even shelters that accepted underage girls fleeing forced marriage. Every time I read something new, I copied it word for word into a tiny spiral notebook I hid in a shoebox beneath the floorboards of our shed. I began making plans not just for me, but for my cousins. At least 6 girls in our extended family were younger than me. Most hadn't gotten their periods yet. I decided if I couldn't escape just yet, maybe I could buy them time. So I started what I called the Wife Skills Club. It sounded innocent. The elders assumed I was helping the girls prepare to be good wives. What I was really doing was staging rehearsals. We'd gather in my uncle's tool shed every Thursday afternoon under the guise of practicing meal prep and modest behavior. But what we were really doing was whispering escape scripts. We'd take turns practicing what to say to a teacher. "They're forcing me to marry. I'm only 13. Please help." We memorized hotlines. We identified the teachers who were most likely to report. We even practiced writing notes to pass in class if saying it out loud was too risky. The notebook I carried grew thicker. I hid multiple copies in different places under my mattress, inside a cereal box, even behind the toilet tank. And I kept waiting for that moment when I would need to run. But despite all my starvation, all my prayers, all my planning, my body betrayed me. It happened during meal prep of all things. I was helping my mother prepare Friday breakfast, a ritual that began at 5 a.m. and lasted until the men were done eating at noon. As I bent to lift a pot from the stove, I felt a sudden wetness between my legs. At first, I thought I'd spilled something, then I looked down. Blood soaking through my white cotton dress. The gasp my mother let out could have shattered glass. She dropped the spoon in her hand and shouted so loud the walls trembled. "She's ready," she cried. "She's finally ready." Within an hour, I was being kissed and congratulated by every woman in the family. There were tears, prayers, celebration. My aunt called it the blessing. By nightfall, I learned that I'd been chosen to be the fourth wife of Elijah Matthews, a 47-year-old contractor from Texas who had generously offered to marry me to keep the tradition alive. He had already buried 2 wives. The death certificate said kidney failure, but the women in our family whispered other causes: too many pregnancies, too young. And as I sat in my room that night staring at the stack of red and gold fabric they'd laid on my bed for the wedding, I knew the war had begun. When I bled, my mother acted like I'd won the lottery. She screamed so loudly the neighbors came out onto their porches. "Claire's a woman now." She cried, tears running down her cheeks. "She's ready to serve our family with pride." Within an hour, our living room transformed into a celebration space. Aunties I hadn't seen in years showed up with sweets and blessings. They kissed my cheeks and told me I was lucky. They said I would bring honor to our household, that I'd been chosen. But it didn't feel like a blessing, it felt like a death sentence. By nightfall, my father, Robert Reynolds, a contractor known for his rigid religious image, had already found a suitor for me. His name was Jeremiah Carter, a 48-year-old real estate mogul from Arizona, twice widowed, no children because his previous wives had both died before turning 24. Kidney failure, they said. But in hushed tones, women in our community whispered a different story. Too many pregnancies, too much too soon. They said Jeremiah treated his wives like incubators, a child every year, until their bodies gave out. I was told I'd meet him in 2 days at a family luncheon. My wedding would take place in less than 3 weeks. It was already planned. The red and gold fabric for the dress arrived the next morning. A pair of heels, a delicate veil, and a gold necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. My mother placed it around my neck and smiled, tears in her eyes. "You'll make a beautiful bride." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled. I let her think I was proud. I let her believe I was grateful. I let everyone believe I was excited to become a bride because I had a plan. It had started in our shed. A week before, I had secretly met with Anna, one of my younger cousins. She was 12 but already asking questions. She'd watched her older sister be forced into a marriage with a 50-year-old man and disappear within a month. No one spoke of her again. Anna was afraid, and she wasn't the only one. By the end of the week, I had formed a group of 6 girls ages 10 to 13. We met in the shed, pretending to learn embroidery and cooking techniques for our wife preparation classes. But really, I was teaching them something else. I called it the escape code. Each meeting, I taught them phrases that would trigger intervention if said to a teacher or school counselor. They're making me marry someone. I'm under 18 and I'm scared. Please help me, it's not safe at home. We rehearsed what to say, how to act, what to write in a note. I gave them code words maps to local shelters and memorized hotlines. I even gave them a list of teachers at our school who were mandatory reporters, those who were required by law to report abuse or suspected danger. I told them to stay alert, to keep quiet, and to be ready. Then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. Anna got her period. It happened just 2 days after mine. Within hours, she was promised to Richard Graham, a 51-year-old man known in our community for collecting wives. He had 8 children, the oldest being 28 older than Anna's mother. Her parents threw a celebration the same way mine had. A feast, a party, jewelry, praise. But I saw Anna's face. I saw the way her lips trembled as she accepted the dress. I saw her eyes empty. That night I snuck into her room. I gave her my notebook, the original one. The one filled with everything: contact numbers, legal rights, emergency addresses, safe phrases, everything I'd memorized. She stared at it, hands shaking. "What about you?" she whispered. "My wedding isn't for 2 weeks," I told her. "I'll figure something out." But I was wrong, because the very next night, Child Protective Services knocked on our door. The knock at the door came just before midnight. At first, I thought it was a neighbor, maybe someone dropping off leftovers from the celebration. But when my father opened it and saw 2 CPS officers in clean-pressed uniforms standing on the porch, his face shifted from confusion to something much darker: rage. "We received a report of potential underage marriage arrangements," one of the agents said calmly. "We'd like to speak to any girls in the household under the age of 18. My father forced a smile, the kind he used when negotiating contracts, and gestured for them to wait. "Of course," he said smoothly, "just give us a moment." But the moment the door shut, our house became a war zone. The women in my family surrounded us. Me, Anna, and the younger cousins. They hissed through clenched teeth. Who talked? Who betrayed the family? Who let outsiders in? They tore through every room, ripping open drawers, dumping backpacks, scanning under beds and rugs. Within minutes, they found the notebook. My notebook. The one I had hidden in the shed. The one I thought I'd hidden well enough. My father held it up like evidence in a courtroom. "What is this? Who taught you these lies?" I said nothing. He burned it in front of everyone, tossed it into the fireplace like it was trash. The flame licked through the pages, curling the inked names of shelters and hotlines into ash. As the fire popped, he turned to me with venom in his voice. "You are diseased," he spat, "poison, a cancer that needs to be cut out." Then he turned to the room. "She gets married tomorrow, no more delays before she destroys another one of you." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in bed fully dressed, my small duffel bag hidden under the floorboard where I'd stashed it days earlier. It contained only what I needed most: a change of clothes, a note card with addresses I had memorized and rewritten, and $22 stolen over the course of months from my mother's purse, $1 at a time. I barely blinked when the sun rose. I knew what today was. The day I was to be handed off to Jeremiah Carter, a man whose previous wives had died quietly, whose smile never reached his eyes, who would probably kill me slowly with pregnancy and silence. As footsteps echoed toward my door, I grabbed my stomach and doubled over with a groan. The door opened. My mother stepped in, dressed head to toe in red and gold, her hair covered her face, glowing. "Get up," she snapped. "The hairdresser is on the way." I gasped. Something's wrong. My stomach. She paused, frowning. "What did you eat?" "Nothing," I choked, stumbling toward the door. "Bathroom? I need to go." She grabbed my arm tightly. "You already went 15 minutes ago." "Please," I begged, tears sliding down my cheeks, this time real. "It hurts so bad." She let go in disgust. "5 minutes," she warned. "The aunties are waiting." I darted down the hallway, clutching the loose nightgown against my body to hide the bag underneath. Once in the bathroom, I locked the door and climbed onto the toilet. The ceiling tile I had loosened 2 weeks ago popped free. I shoved the bag into the cavity, then flushed the toilet to make it seem real. "Claire," my mother shouted through the door, "you've been in there too long." "I can't stop," I groaned. "It's bad." Her fists pounded the wood. The window above the toilet, painted shut for years, was only 9 inches wide. But I had been starving myself for years. I knew I could make it. I pried at the corners with the butter knife I'd hidden inside the toilet tank. The paint cracked, the frame loosened. Footsteps, voices, multiple people now, my aunts, my father, they were all outside the door. "She's planning something," someone muttered. "Break the door." I jammed the bag through the window first. Then I hoisted myself up shoulders, scraping on the wood ribs pressing against the edge. I twisted sideways, ignoring the splinters digging into my hip. The lock splintered just as my foot cleared the window frame. I dropped 6 feet onto wet grass, twisting my ankle but not breaking it. A shout erupted behind me. They knew. They had seen me. I ran barefoot, nightgown-soaked lungs, screaming across our backyard and into the neighbor's yard. Lights flicked on. Dogs barked. Car engines roared. But I didn't stop, because I knew one thing for sure. If I let them catch me now, if I hesitated for even a second, I would not survive to run again. My bare feet slapped against concrete, already torn and bleeding. I had memorized the route 100 times, 3 blocks to the main road, 4 to the bus stop. But in that moment, with adrenaline flooding my system and shouts echoing behind me, every turn felt unfamiliar. Behind me, I heard the roar of engines, 2, maybe 3, they'd already mobilized. They always said our family was tight-knit. I now understood that meant dangerous. I ducked through the Alvarado's garden, past their fountain, and into a side alley. Motion sensor lights flicked on. A security camera followed my movement. I hoped someone was watching. I hoped no one would help. I crossed into the neighboring cul-de-sac, a maze of identical homes filled with families from our community, people who would turn me in without blinking. They believed in order, in tradition, in silence. At the Donahues, I crouched behind their trash bins as headlights swept by. My cousin Leo's voice rang out. "She has to be close. Check every yard." I cut through the Nguyen's backyard, jumped the fence, and landed hard. I winced, glass embedded deeper into my heel, but there was no time to stop. I saw the bus stop ahead, and just as the bus pulled in, I sprinted, waving frantically. The driver, a middle-aged black woman, took one look at my bloody feet and torn nightgown and opened the door without hesitation. I climbed aboard, chest heaving. My hands trembled as I reached for my bag, then froze. It was gone. The $22 I'd saved over months. My ID, my emergency note. It was still in the ceiling crawl space. My voice cracked. "Please, I have to get downtown. I don't have money. I'll pay you back." She hesitated. Then an older woman sitting at the front walked over and slid exact change into the machine. "Sit down, baby," she said, gently motioning to the seat beside her. I sank into the seat, shaking. Outside, Leo's car skidded into the lot, headlights blazing. The woman beside me shifted, positioning herself between me and the window. She handed me tissues from her purse, not asking questions. She simply said, "You're safe now." We rode in silence for 15 minutes. Every bump in the road sent fresh pain up my leg. My foot throbbed with each heartbeat, but I didn't dare cry. At Lakewood Terminal, she pressed a $10 bill into my hand. "Whatever you're running from," she whispered, "don't go back." I thanked her, barely able to get the words out. I stepped off the bus and walked limped across 3 more intersections, finally reaching the courthouse. The building loomed in front of me like a fortress. I'd only ever seen it from a distance before riding in the back seat of my parents' car. But now it was the only place that could save me. Security guards glanced at me as I passed through the metal detectors, my nightgown streaked with dirt, blood dripping down one leg. But no one stopped me. At the family court clerk's desk, a woman in her 50s with a soft face stood up the moment she saw me. "Sweetheart," she said, coming around the desk, "do you need help? Are you in danger?" I nodded. "I'm 15. They're trying to marry me off today. Please help me." She guided me to a seat, brought over forms, and helped me fill out an emergency protective order. "Where will you be staying?" she asked gently. I recited the name and address of a shelter I'd memorized, praying there'd be room. As she faxed the petition to a judge, my phone, tossed hastily in my nightgown pocket, began to vibrate nonstop. My mother, my father, unknown numbers, Leo, then more unknowns. I didn't answer a single one. Voicemail after voicemail piled up. I didn't have to listen. I knew what they would say. "You've dishonored us. You are cursed. You're dead to us." The clerk returned this time with a judge. He reviewed the paperwork on the spot. "Emergency protective order granted," he said. "Effective immediately. A hearing will be scheduled in 2 weeks." The woman smiled at me. "You're not alone anymore, Claire. You did the right thing." I nodded and held the paper like it was a passport to another world. But then I called the shelter. "We're full," the voice on the line said. "We can place you on a wait list for Thursday." Thursday, my heart sank. That was 3 days away. I had nowhere to go, no backup plan. Then I remembered Ms. Ramirez, my English teacher. The one who'd shown me those pamphlets months ago, the one who'd forgotten to lock her drawer. Maybe she hadn't forgotten after all. I pulled out the $10 bill the woman on the bus had given me, hobbled to the bus stop, and boarded the next ride heading toward Jefferson High School. It was Saturday. The building should have been empty. But her car was in the lot. The school hallways were still. My footsteps echoed against the linoleum as I limped toward room 214, Ms. Ramirez's classroom. She was there, red pen in hand, surrounded by a sea of ungraded essays. The moment she saw me, her pen dropped to the floor. "Oh my God," she whispered, crossing the room in seconds. Her eyes darted across my torn nightgown, my bloody feet, the protective order clutched in my hand. "Sit," she ordered. "Don't move." She returned with the nurse's first aid kit and began cleaning my feet in silence. The sting of antiseptic barely registered. I had long since moved past physical pain. But the moment she dabbed away the first streak of blood, I broke down. "They were going to make me marry him today," I sobbed. He already killed 2 wives before me." Ms. Ramirez's face darkened. "Not anymore." She pulled out her phone and dialed the CPS emergency line, her voice sharp and professional. "Yes, I have a minor here with a protective order. She escaped a forced marriage this morning. Yes, she's in immediate danger." She listened carefully, then her jaw tensed. 15, that's still borderline," the voice on the other end said. "Does she have documented abuse injuries?" Ms. Ramirez glanced at my feet. "Yes, but they said self-inflicted doesn't count." My phone vibrated again. This time she picked it up. "Hello," she said firmly. Her face went pale. "No, she's not sick. She's safe." She pulled the phone away and looked at me. "It's your father." Of course. Calm, composed, full of concern. He was using his professional voice, the same one he used at his insurance firm. "She's mentally unstable," he was saying. "She needs medication. We're very worried." Ms. Ramirez hung up and looked at me. "How did he know where you were?" "My phone," I whispered. "They were probably tracking it." "Wipe it," now she said. "Factory reset." As I did, she began making more calls. Social workers, legal aid, CPS supervisors, each one giving the same disappointing answer. "No immediate proof of abuse. We can't intervene yet." I could see her frustration mounting. Then we heard a car door slamming in the parking lot. Ms. Ramirez peered through the blinds. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Get in the supply closet." "No," I said. "Let me try something first." I rolled up my sleeves to show her the circular burns from the pot training. I lifted the hem of my nightgown just enough to show the belt marks across my back from the years of service drills. Her hands trembled as she snapped photos with her phone. "Why didn't you show this before?" "I thought it was normal," I whispered, "until I read your pamphlets." She nodded once, then dialed again, 911. "I have a student with me. Several adult males are trying to enter my classroom. The student has visible injuries. She's under protective order." The banging on the classroom door intensified. "Claire." My uncle's voice rang out. "We have your medication. Come home, sweetheart." "She's bipolar," someone else shouted. "She's delusional. She's dangerous." Then came my father's voice. "Her phone showed this location. We just want to talk." Ms. Ramirez grabbed her laptop. "Let's prove it," she muttered. "If they have medication, they brought it with them." She called the school security office. Mr. Halston, the weekend guard, picked up. "Check the parking lot feed," she said. "See if they arrived with anything in hand." Moments later, he confirmed it. They'd arrived holding prescription bottles with my name on them. "But I've never been on medication," I said. "No therapy, no doctors, nothing." As the banging escalated, the 911 dispatcher assured us that units were en route. I turned to Ms. Ramirez. "Wait, I have another way." I opened her email and pulled up the saved folder, the essays I had written for her class. Every assignment I had tucked secrets between the lines. Cooking class meant hand burns. Morning chores meant belt lashes. Family tradition meant forced obedience. She opened the documents and began reading aloud. "They're trying to erase her. This is a pattern," she said, "and she's not the only one." Then another name popped into my head. "Call Jessica Matthews," I said urgently. "She filed a report last week. She saw everything." But when Ms. Ramirez searched, she frowned. Her family moved no forwarding address. "Already," I whispered, "they moved her." My father's voice outside turned frantic. He was speaking in Arabic now, snapping at my uncles, waving his arms. "What's he saying?" the officer asked when they arrived minutes later. "He's telling them to call the family lawyer I translated and to prepare the dowry refund." "Dowry?" The officer narrowed his eyes. "Why would a dowry need refunding?" My father froze. I misspoke my English. "Your English was fine 5 minutes ago," the officer replied. It was all crumbling now. One by one, the pieces were falling into place. Fake prescriptions, fake concern, a fabricated illness. But we needed more. That's when a woman walked in, flanked by a CPS rep. "I'm Noelle Carter," she said, her voice trembling. "I was Jeremiah's first wife." You could have heard a pin drop when Noelle Carter said I didn't die. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My father's attorney shot up like he'd been burned. Objection, this witness was not disclosed. But the judge raised a hand. Let her speak. Noelle stood straight, her eyes dark, a pale scarf around her neck like a soft barrier. I was 15 when I was married to Jeremiah Carter. By 20, I'd had 4 children. My kidneys were failing. My parents told the community I died. But a nurse at Mercy Hospital helped me escape. Murmurs erupted. Some of the women behind my mother started crying. Others stared in disbelief. Noelle pulled out hospital records, photos, and legal identification, all showing her name and confirming she was very much alive. She turned to the judge. I couldn't stay silent when I saw Claire's face in that post. I knew what they were about to do to her, what they did to me. Her voice trembled but didn't break. My pregnancies were forced. When I couldn't conceive fast enough, I was beaten. When I cried, I was told I was failing God. My parents chose silence over my life. I only survived because someone in the system took a risk to protect me. Then she looked at me. That someone is who you became for others. My father's lawyer looked like he wanted the floor to open and swallow him whole. He stood trying to recover. With all due respect, this is a tragic case but not directly related. It's directly related, the judge said sharply. She was nearly given to the same man. That establishes a pattern. My father finally lost control. He stood shouting something in Arabic. 2 officers stepped between him and the bench. His suit jacket flared open, revealing prescription bottles in the inner pocket, just like the ones he'd brought to Ms. Ramirez's school. You are no daughter of mine, he spat at me, this time in English. The judge didn't flinch. Sit down or you'll be removed. My mother stood too. Slowly, with trembling hands, she removed her scarf, her hijab, and let it fall to the courtroom floor. We have no daughter, she said quietly. She died today. Silence again. It didn't feel like a death sentence. It felt like freedom. As I walked out of that courtroom, the rows of family, uncles, cousins, aunts refused to meet my eyes. A few whispered prayers. Others cursed softly under their breath. But none of them stopped me, not this time. Noelle was waiting for me outside. We didn't say much. She just opened her arms and held me like someone who knew exactly how much it hurt to survive. My attorney, Patricia Monroe, was beaming with quiet pride. The order is permanent, no contact. If they try anything, it's criminal. I was no longer a target. I was protected by law. That paper wouldn't stop everything, but it was a shield I hadn't had before. But as Patricia helped me into the car, she leaned in. This isn't the end, Claire. They'll shift tactics. We've seen it before. Stay vigilant. She was right. Within days, the whispers began. First, my social media accounts were hacked, photos, edited, captions written to make me look unstable. My face was turned into a cautionary tale, a mentally ill girl corrupted by Western ideology. Then came the lawsuits, civil suits, defamation, alienation of affection, intentional infliction of emotional distress, all baseless, all expensive. They're trying to drain your resources, Patricia warned, but we'll counter every motion. Even the small community businesses that once greeted Theodora warmly now looked at her with wary eyes. One bakery refused to serve her. We just can't get involved, the owner said awkwardly. Your foster girl, her family has a lot of influence. Then more disturbing news. Girls from the Wife Skills group I'd once tried to help my younger cousins began appearing online in rebuttal videos. One by one, they parroted carefully rehearsed lines. She told us lies, Margie said, sitting stiffly beside her mother. She made us afraid of our own families, said another girl. I saw it in their eyes, fear, shame, coaching. Theodora turned off the laptop. Enough, she said. This is psychological warfare. But it worked. For a moment, I wondered if it was worth it. I'd wanted to save them. Now they were being used to destroy me. That night, the doorbell rang. A woman stood on the porch in a press suit holding an envelope. I'm here to deliver legal documents to the minor child residing at this address. Theodora narrowed her eyes. Leave them in the mailbox. But I recognized her as she turned. Sarah, my cousin, 3 years older, wearing a wig and heels. Her face was lined with makeup, but her eyes shimmered with tears. She didn't say anything, just slid the envelope into the mailbox and walked away. Inside were photos: my grandmother in a hospital bed, my sister at her birthday party, my mother crying over a pot of stew. Each image curated to weaponize guilt. But one photo stopped me cold. Anna, wearing a modest dress, a diamond ring on her left hand. Her eyes were blank. On the back of the photo was one sentence: she came home. She's happy now. 3 days after that phone call, I woke to the sound of someone pounding on my front door like they were trying to break it down. Not knocking, slamming again and again. It was barely 8:01 a.m. Still groggy, I rushed to the door, heart racing, half expecting police, CPS, or some kind of emergency. What I got was far worse. Standing there was Tiffany, wild-eyed and manic, flanked by a man who looked like he belonged in a wrestling ring. He had to be at least 6'6", maybe 300 pounds, broad-balled and stone-faced. Behind them, I spotted my mother, arms folded and wearing her usual scowl. Before I could speak, the man shoved me. Not just a gentle push, he put his massive palm on my shoulder and threw me backward into the hallway. I hit the floor, hard pain blooming through my shoulder and ribs as I cried out. They stepped inside like they owned the place. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed, scrambling to get up. "You can't just break in here." Tiffany didn't respond. She turned to the man and barked something in what sounded like Russian. He gave a curt nod and stomped down the hallway. My heart dropped. The boys. I sprinted after him, but he was already standing at the guest room doorway. Jason and Caleb had just woken up and were peeking out, hair-tousled eyes still foggy with sleep. "Don't touch them," I yelled, trying to wedge myself between the kids and the man. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed Jason, lifted him like a sack of flour, and marched toward the front door. I lunged to stop him, but he twisted and shoved me into the wall, hard. My head cracked against the drywall, and for a second, everything spun. I could hear the boys crying now. "We don't want to go," Jason shouted. "We want to stay with Aunt Marissa." Caleb's tiny voice echoed after him, "Please don't take us." My mother followed behind, silent but complicit eyes fixed ahead, never looking at me, not even once. Tiffany brought up the rear, and as she passed me still on the floor and holding my throbbing head, she stopped. "Pathetic," she sneered. Then she spit in my face, right between my eyes, and they walked out. Just like that. No clothes, no backpacks, no breakfast, no goodbye. They shoved those sweet, gentle boys into the back seat of a massive black SUV and peeled out of the driveway like criminals fleeing a scene. And in every sense they were. I laid there on the floor for what felt like an eternity. Dizzy, heartbroken, humiliated. My entire body was shaking, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying their faces, Jason's panicked eyes, Caleb's little hand reaching back toward me as the door slammed shut. I don't remember how long I cried, but when I finally pulled myself off the floor, I was a different person. The version of me that always hesitated, that always stayed quiet, that waited for justice to appear on its own. She was gone. I called the police, and to my surprise, they were already looped in thanks to the open CPS case. When I told the responding officer what had just happened, I could hear the urgency in his voice shift. I described the man, his build, accent, demeanor, and the SUV. I could still see the license plate in my mind, clear as day, burned there from panic and pain. I gave it all to the officer, and he promised me they would act immediately. I sat down on the living room couch, staring at the floor, trembling again. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think. All I could picture was Jason and Caleb in that car, barefoot, scared, unprotected, and the woman who was supposed to love them more than anything standing by while a stranger dragged them away. This wasn't just about me anymore. It hadn't been for a while. This was about saving them from the same life I had barely survived. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew this much: I was going to fight for them with everything I had. Because no one else ever fought for me. The new safe house was tucked away in a quiet New Jersey suburb just over 40 miles from my previous placement. It belonged to a retired police officer named Frank Delaney, who had converted the apartment above his garage into a secure living space for cases like mine. Motion sensors dotted the perimeter. Cameras watched every entrance. Panic buttons sat beneath each window. It wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. But I couldn't rest. Every night I studied the address Anna had whispered to me. A house not far from where I'd grown up, another enclave where our community lived in tight clusters. I knew what it meant. There were more girls, more silence, more fear, and I couldn't abandon them. The next morning, Ms. Rodriguez arrived with boxes packed full of basic school supplies and something else: our plan. We'd decided to take the fight further. Turn those pamphlets she once left unlocked in a drawer into something larger, smarter, and harder to trace. We created packets disguised as normal homework materials. Math problems concealing hotline numbers. Social studies worksheets outlining legal rights and journal prompts designed to spark awareness, not fear. Each packet carried a subtle watermark that only we would recognize. By Wednesday, we'd printed 50 and mapped out a strategy: distribute them through school nurses, mandated reporters at middle and high schools throughout the region. Ms. Rodriguez coordinated with allies, women like her, who had seen too much and stayed quiet too long. Then came a knock at the door. A social worker brought a girl named Rena, just 13, who had received one of our disguised packets. Her whisper was barely audible as she said, "My cousin found your notebook hidden under a bed. I read it every night. She'd just started menstruating last week. Her mother already had a suitor in mind, 47 years old." She trembled with fear but lit up when I told her she wasn't alone. Margaret immediately arranged her protective placement. That night, my burner phone rang again. I hesitated, but something in me said, "Pick up." A girl spoke quickly in panic. "We found your pages. There are 6 of us. We're all in danger." I reached for my notebook and scribbled names, ages, and where they were hiding. 3 of them had already been promised. I gave them code words, safe adults to approach, and instructions to act as soon as possible. "And if you get caught," I said, "voice steady, you try again. And again. You don't stop until you're free." The following morning, Patricia called in alarm. My father's lawyers had filed an emergency motion claiming I was recruiting minors and corrupting youth. They wanted me charged criminally for coercing children into abandoning their families. "It won't hold," she reassured me, "but they're trying to scare you." I wasn't scared anymore. That afternoon, I met with the journalist Ms. Rodriguez, trusted Clarissa Eng, an investigative writer for a national human rights blog. We outlined the network in detail, keeping all names confidential. She promised to publish when the time was right. On Saturday, a package arrived with no return address postmarked from Minnesota. Inside were photos and a handwritten letter. The letter was from Fatima. She stood in scrubs smiling at her graduation. "I wanted you to see what's possible," she wrote. "5 years of hiding, but I built a life. I became a nurse. I fell in love with someone who sees me as a human being, not a transaction. Keep going. The world needs you." I cried until I couldn't anymore. Sunday brought a call from Margaret. 3 more girls had come forward after receiving our packets, all from different families. CPS had already begun investigations. Then on Monday, Patricia sent a link. My father's attorney had held a press conference claiming I was mentally unstable, a danger to myself and others. But this time we had a counterstrike. Teachers, social workers, girls who had gotten out. One by one, we published anonymous essays. Voices too long ignored. By Wednesday, the Freedom Network was born, an alliance of women, teachers, attorneys, and survivors. Friday was my court hearing for the renewal of my permanent protective order. But this time, the courtroom wasn't filled with those who wanted me silenced. It was filled with those I had saved. No relatives, no shame, just girls who wore scars like armor and women who held their hands. When the judge ruled in my favor, I saw not just a legal victory, but a seismic shift. Outside the courthouse, Fatima met me with open arms. "They erased you from the family," she said softly, "but they'll never erase what you've done." As we drove back, my phone buzzed. It was another unknown number. A girl's voice, trembling but alive, spoke. "I found your notebook. Can you help me?" And without hesitation, I whispered the only word I knew mattered now. "Yes."